The Lord Savior Jesus Christ, His peace and love may stay with us all. Today, I'm going to talk the word in the topic rest in hope. Romans chapter 5, verse 3 to 5, Paul says that we can rejoice in our sufferings because we are a people of hope. Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and the character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. So, how can we have hope when everything looks hopeless? For that, we wanted to rely on God's three things. First, we wanted to rely on God's presence, we wanted to rely on God's provision, and the last, we wanted to rely on God's power. First, we wanted to rely on God's presence. Rejoicing in suffering does not mean celebrating when bad news comes. But it does not mean that we can believe that God is doing a redemptive work. This word redemptive means that God does not waste a hurt or disappointment. He is using them to shape and build us into the image of Jesus, which is His highest passion. When we go through suffering, we often pray and seek God more intensely than at other many times. In Psalm 23, verse 4, David writes that he does not fear because God is with him. He relies on God's presence and it brings him strength and comfort. Remember that for there to be a shadow, there has to be a light. I don't know what your valley of the shadow of death, but I do know who the light is that is walking with you in that valley. In other psalm, David reveals that one of the reasons for his joy is that he is forgiven. Blessed is the one whose transgression are forgiven, whose sins are covered. We can't determine God's love for us based on good or bad circumstances. We determine His love based on the cross, what He did for us on it. Secondly, we want to rely on God's provision. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, Paul reveals that he has suffered from a thorn in the flesh. God was so concerned about Paul not becoming proud, he allowed this to happen to him to prevent him from becoming conceited. In our current situations, God is saying to us that His grace is sufficient, and even when we feel weak, He is making us stronger than we have ever been. His grace is not an abstract idea, it is the person of Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit. The hell you are going through may be the very circumstance God uses to take you to a whole new level. Third, we wanted to rely on God's power. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, ninth verse of the second section, it tells like this: Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. What is your weakness? A job situation that has not in the way that was planned? A medical diagnosis that was scared you? Maybe, like Paul, it is also insults, hardships, or persecutions. Whatever it is, Paul says he will boost in those things because when we are weak, the power of Christ rests on us. The greater the enemy comes at you, the greater Jesus is in you. So, my lovely friends, whatever the situation is bad, have hope on Christ because the Bible tells like this: His grace is sufficient for all. He will turn your hardships into a delightful one. Thank you. Have a blessed month.